Hi, my name's Eric Nelson. I'm a developer on the Ansible app team. I'm going to be demoing some additional features that we've added to the ASB CLI, particularly ASB CLI up, which helps bring up a broker inside of an existing OpenShift cluster. So I'm going to be showing off how you can go from basically nothing to having an OpenShift cluster with a broker inside of it, and then we've also packaged up ManageIQ into an Ansible app, so we should be able to deploy that with the Ansible app broker. So I'm in a directory here. We've got a Vagrant environment right here called the CentOS origin cluster that brings up actually a multi-node origin cluster. It's going to require something on the order of 16 gigs of RAM, 8 for the master, and then I'm sorry, 16 for the master and 8 for each of the nodes. It also requires the Ansible Service Broker project to be checked out at the same level, and as well as Ansible app. So I'm going to go in and fire up Vagrant. One thing to note is that this OpenShift cluster also, when it comes up, is going to create 4 separate persistent volumes that are going to be consumed by the ManageIQ when we bring that up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Vagrant. Right now this is probably going to take about 30 minutes, so we're going to cut ahead, but in the future we plan on sort of snapshotting that so that you can start right away from a working OpenShift environment. One other thing to note is that we have some special requirements for permissioning. So there's the cluster admin on a user account. We need to be able to bring up privileged containers, and we also need any UID as well. So I'm going to go ahead and run Vagrant up, and I'll let that run. Okay, so we're picking back up after having brought up the Vagrant cluster. I can prove that by navigating in here, and we're going to run a Vagrant status. So I should have a master and 2 nodes up right now. The other thing I'm going to have to do, and we plan on building this into a Vagrant hook, but Vagrant will reset some Iptables rules. We need to be able to forward some traffic over to the master node. So I'm just going to have it in my history here. And it is this guy, 9972. Just going to add that right now. There we go. So now I can forward the traffic from local containers running on my host to the master VM. Okay. So at this point, we want to be able to get a broker into the cluster, and that's the new feature that we have in ASB CLI, which is ASB CLI up. That will bring a broker up inside of the cluster and provide a route for you to talk to it. So I'm going to go into Ansible Service Broker. That's the source repo for the broker itself. Inside of that, we've got ASB CLI. So if you go into scripts, ASB CLI, and we've got the script right here. So I'm going to run ASB CLI up, and this requires a couple arguments. The first is going to be that your cluster user that you're going to use to deploy this. I'm going to use admin because that's the account that we have correctly permissioned to do this. This also requires a Docker Hub user, and what this is for is to talk to the Docker registry to discover any of the Ansible apps that have been published to the Ansible app organization. It is configurable, so you can point to different organizations, but for our purposes we're going to be using Ansible app. And then finally we need to give it the cluster location. So that's going to be 192.168.156.5. That's the master node on port 8443. So I'm going to give the passwords here and my Docker password. Okay, so what it's doing now is the cluster is downloading the packaged up broker that we have published, and it's going to run that. It's actually packaged up as an Ansible app itself, so that's a little meta there. And there's the Ansible output. So let's do an OC login and log into the cluster. And you can see over here the Ansible Service Broker project has been created, so I'm going to switch to that. And let's see what pods are running inside of it. So it's currently deploying the ASB pod. Separately, we've got an etcd pod that this comes with, since ASB uses etcd. I think we're expecting that to use the cluster's etcd instance moving forwards, but for now it brings its own. So we'll just wait for, and it's up. So let's just get the logs from that, make sure that it's running. There we go, so it's listening. And let's get its route. Oops. So we've got this route. So the broker is now up inside of the cluster. It's configured so that it will deploy to the same cluster, and it's living behind this route, so we can talk to it via this route. The other thing that ASB CLI can do that's now behind a connect command, which is the only thing that it used to do, is it has a little menu for driving that broker. So I'm going to connect to the broker that we have inside of the cluster now at the route. So now you see the menu that we saw before. We've got a few options here. The first thing we need to do is bootstrap it so it loads all the metadata out of Docker Hub. That's why we needed the Docker Hub user credentials. So we should see, I think, 9. There we go. We have 9 specs back from the Docker Hub. So let's see what's available. This is slowly growing, but this time we're going to deploy ManageIQ, which is a recent thing that we've done. So I'm going to go through and just basically accept all the default values that we've got here, but it is configurable. And there we go. So service is configured. It's requesting the broker for provisioning. We got a 201 back, so the broker has initiated provisioning. So let's see what projects are around. Hasn't created the project yet. The Ansible app meta container is running inside of the Ansible Service Broker namespace, so let's see what's inside of that. So it's creating this container. It's probably downloading it right now since this is a fresh environment. So we'll just wait for that image to get pulled. We'll just wait. There we go. So it downloaded the meta container and executed that inside of the Ansible Service Broker namespace, which then in turn created an MIQ Ansible app namespace where our ManageIQ instance is going to live. So let's switch to that project. And let's watch for the pod status. First, let's check out the PVs. We've got 2 PVs that have been claimed. MIQ is really only going to need 2, so you've got some extras in this environment in case you need them. But we've got a PVC here for the app and then Postgres as well. So let's watch the pods. This is going to take a bit to come up. It's downloading the ManageIQ instance, I think, right here. You can see Postgres is up, so that's got its PVC. So this is probably going to take another 5 minutes to run. It's got to download the image, and then once it's got the image, it's going to run it. It's going to mount the PVC into it, and it's going to do some, MIQ is going to basically kick off whatever startup work it needs to do, like migrating the database, etc. So in addition to that, we need to wait for it to bring up its HTTPD processes so that we can actually talk to it. I'm going to show there is a route here. So this is where we expect it to live. It is behind an HTTPS, so it's got an SSL endpoint. So I'm going to capture this, and then we'll pick up once this comes up. There we go. So it's running. Let's just attach to it. So it's got a bunch of processes that it's running. It's doing sort of startup work. So I'm going to skip ahead here as soon as the HTTPD processes come up. Okay, so we've waited a little bit just for ManageIQ to come up. Normally it takes about 5 minutes. It didn't actually take 13 minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and get the route again. Okay, so let's try and log into ManageIQ. It's living behind HTTPS, so make sure you don't forget that. There we go. So now I'm in the ManageIQ dashboard. So that's basically the new stuff that we've added to ASB CLI. It's the ASB CLI up feature, which should help people get a broker up and running so that they can play with it and deploy Ansible apps. And we've also got ManageIQ available now. So thanks for watching.